And one of the problems we have with medication, they have been stolen by kids, and they usually get high on. So if don't leave it down for kids to get to, because that's the easy way of buying drugs. They know mom and dad are gonna get their medication, and I can get high on it. And a lot of times, you can easily do it. Hydrocodone, you can even sell them. Kids get medication from their parents and whatever, and sell them. So we want to prevent that. Most time when a person dies, we take the medicine from the house. We don't leave them there because kids can get into that and mess around and take that and OD. So we try to take the medicine away from the house too. Homicide. Homicide, the taking of one human life by another being. Premeditated, murder or whatever. That was a homicide. Automatically the coroner gonna come in on a homicide case. The police is gonna investigate the crime scene and check it out and do all they take, lifting the fingerprints or whatever, but the coroner gonna automatically take this case and call the medical examiner and have an autopsy done on this case. Accidental death, as the term would suggest, the death of an individual by means of others than natural death, a murder or suicide. Accident is something that happened, wasn't planned to happen. A car accident, you wasn't planning. Somebody walking across the road and got hit. You hadn't planned to hit that person. They just walked out there in the road or whatever. Same thing. So those are accidental death. And then most time families know that accidental death most time pay double indemnity when an accident happened or whatever. Accidents, like I said, they wasn't planned for this to happen, but it's just an accident that happened. So that's what a coroner have to go in those cases. And then determine did the person die from that incident, or did the person was already dead or whatever, because you can also plan an accidental death too. So you can plant these things, so you need to check it out and see what happened to cause the accident. Suicide taking your own life. Sometimes with a gun, drugs, they wouldn't intend to OD. And then sometimes people take drugs, I'm gonna take all these pills, I'm tired of living or whatever, and kill themselves. So the coroner had to determine, well, did the person die from taking so many medication or what? Because they didn't leave a note. Many times they leave notes and they call their loved one. I mean, I love you. When they start, you have to check the phone record or whatever. I call everybody and tell everybody I love them. So the coroner have to do the investigation to find out why that person committed suicide. Was they under some kind of financial obligation or whatever? They couldn't deal with life or whatever? Had they just got laid off from the job or whatever? Did the wife and the man and the wife break up? Things like that. But a suicide, the person was intended to commit death. So some of those cases, especially on a suicide case where a person shoot themselves, if the bullet exit, sometimes the remains do not have to go to the crime lab because the bullet is not in the body. But if the bullet is still inside, we do not bury a bullet. So the bullet have to go to the crime lab so we can retrieve that bullet and see that that particular bullet killed them, because you can plant a person gun in somebody's hand and shoot them with another gun. So you have to determine, was it suicide? Because you have to say, like I said, I use this a picture. Was the gun in the person's hand? How far the gun was from that person? Did somebody move the gun? Did somebody plant the gun? Did you see any blood splatter on the hand? All these things you have to determine, was it suicide or somebody plant something in their hand? Because you can plant something, a gun in somebody's hand after they're dead, after you shoot them. So that's important. Undetermined death is when you can't determine whether it's a homicide or suicide. All the evidence you got, you just can't determine which way it was. So then you go undetermined. You leave it. You sign the death certificate as undetermined. You don't have enough proof to determine whether the person committed suicide or was it a homicide. So definitely you have those kinds of death. You accidental, natural, homicide, undetermined. So those are the different kinds of death. So those are categories that the pathology most time used to put as a manner of death, and the coroner used. What is the difference between cause of death and the manner of death? The manner of death, I told you, homicide, suicide, accident, undetermined, natural, whatever. But because somebody shoot themselves, a person shot by a gun, was it a homicide or suicide? So that's the manner, but they were shot by a gun. See what I'm saying? So that was the cause. They were shot by a gun. So sometimes they get it confused on that thing, but you have to determine what the act of what happened. Was that person the first a natural death? On the death certificate, you have to put down the cause of death. The manner might have been natural. Did the person die from prostate cancer? Did the person die from hypertension? Did the person die from diabetes? So the coroner have to pull all these medical records together and determine how that person died. He have to get with the doctors, he have to get with the family and see what happened. Was the person depressed? Well, how was the person acting right before they died, before the EMS came in? So those are the things you have to determine. Finding the cause of death, like I say, you have to pull a medical record, talk to the next of kin, sometimes interview the neighbors or whatever to find out what happened leading up to that death. Most time a body can tell you a lot of things if you look at it and examine enough. It can almost tell you how long, how many, it won't be able to tell you the exact minute, but you can look at a body to determine how many hours approximately they might have been dead. It depends on the environment too. You can tell there's rigor mortis set in, has livor mortis set in, determine those things. It's how the eyes look, is the eyes cloudy. There's different things the body can tell you. Like I was telling you about a natural death. If that person's ankle is swollen, I know they got some kind of heart disease, most likely. So number one, I'm gonna go pull the medical record. I'm gonna go to the hospital, I need to pull the medical record to see, did the person have some kind of disease or whatever. Cause the person emaciated or look sick or whatever, everybody don't have AIDS. A lot of times people say the other person like he had AIDS or whatever, but you won't never know that until you draw the blood and find out and test that, because a person can have cancer and look like that and they have AIDS. It's different things, so you have to do just more than just assume what someone say. I don't never go on what just a family member say. I try to pull the medical record. If I don't have the medical record to prove what you're saying, then that person may not have that. But the main way to find out the cause of death, if you don't know, unsure, is to have an autopsy done. That's what the medical examiners do, to prove what happened. Because a lot of times you can get inside of someone doing an autopsy, you find out they had a eroded kidney, a pancreas. They was an alcoholic. Well, nobody, family member didn't tell me that he drunk or whatever, then you find, he was a drinker. So then that could be a cause of manner of death right there. So I'm saying it all depends. So autopsy can tell a lot of things. A lot of time a person hit in the head. You might not see it because they have a lot of hair on their head or whatever, but once you take the scalp back, you can see the bruises and the trauma. Same thing about a baby. We've had numerous of babies. No marks on the outside of the baby. But when you do the autopsy, you find that the baby got a ruptured spleen. So that let me know somebody must have hit that baby in the stomach. The ruptured spleen. The spleen just don't happen like that. So somebody, in many cases, we have found that happen. And then a lot of times, individuals, they take babies. And I'm going to use this scenario. A lot of times we as a parent, we used to take babies and throw them up. You remember? They be laughing and jumping, and you catch them. You don't realize sometimes that hurts you because when you grab the baby back, when the baby, throw the baby up and grab the baby, you can easily fracture the baby rib and puncture the lung. So that ain't good all the time. Even though the baby might be laughing when you throw them up, you like to see the baby laugh and play, but do not do that, because you can then automatically defects are gonna come in because you got trauma there. So we don't. I don't encourage people to do that. So things like that you have to look for. And the same thing about children. A lot of times you ever seen a mama sometime going down in the store, come on here, snatch your arm out of place. Or whatever, little things you can do to kids like that, and then you open the door for investigation. So I encourage Pamela, don't do that. Same thing about co-sleeping. Don't sleep with your baby, because you sleep with your baby a lot of time. I know a lot of time they're trying to breastfeed them or whatever, and then you going to sleep, you're tired, you're working so many hours or whatever. But we have had many of death with babies sleeping right up under the mama and found dead. So and then you suffocated the baby. It was an accidental death, but still it happened, and it's something that you have to live with the rest of your life. So I encourage parents, don't sleep with your baby like that. Let them sleep in the playpen by themselves, in the bed by themselves, and let them sleep on the back. A lot of times they sleep on the stomach, you got a problem sometimes. So let them practice sleeping on the back, but let them sleep in their own bed, because a lot of times we work so many hours now, we're so busy. So when you put the baby down, you can easily suffocate them, and we've had this happen this year. So I'm actually, that is something that you want to avoid happening. Another thing, shaking. You don't see the baby when you, shut up. And then a lot of time it happens, most time when there's a boyfriend. Most time it don't be that person's child, and he babysitting, the mama going to work or whatever, and he take the child and tell him to shake it, and throw him down in the bed or whatever. You do a lot of damage to the baby brain. the brain is like kind of like mushy in a baby, and it's like water, just gushing, and then automatic, the baby might be coherent, it might be kind of out of it. When the mama get there, it may be a day so later that the baby die. But then you got to do the background and the leg work and find out what led up to this baby death. So that's why I said it ain't all death is not SIDS. So SIDS is the elimination of everything else. So all death is not SIDS. So that would encourage parents, be careful who the babysitter is too now. Because a lot of things happen in nursing homes too. What is an autopsy? Autopsy is a medical procedure that it consists of a thorough exam, like I said, done by the medical examiner. Many times, if it's just a gunshot wound you think is a suicide, the medical examiner may not do a complete autopsy. They may just take the bullet out the head. Then if it's something natural, you think the person might have died from some kind of kidney disease or whatever, you might just want to do a limited dissection. You got a full autopsy when they do the head, the whole dissection, taking all the organs out. Then you got certain things you think the person might have had an enlarged heart. When you start autopsy and you open the chest cavity or whatever, and you see a heart about the size of a football, where this person had some hypertension or he had something going on. A lot of times the medical examiner may stop there, and you got to cause the death or whatever. So all that plays an important part if you don't know what the cause of death. When is the autopsy performed? Like I said, unexpected death, any kind of injury, like a motorcycle, a car accident or whatever. If it's just a single car accident, person going down the road, hit a tree, nobody else involved, many times he may not go to the crime lab, because what we'll do, we'll probably draw blood and see was the person drunk, was he on drugs or whatever, he might have went to sleep. So you got to determine what caused the death. Sometimes they may not go to the crime lab. Now, if the passenger get killed and the driver's still alive, charges are going to be brought, most likely. So then that person need to go to the crime lab to prove exactly what happened, because charges are going to be brought and the person probably going to court. So those are some of the things. Poison, somebody can easily poison someone. If you suspect poison, or somebody died from poison or whatever, most time if I'm at a house or whatever, I ask you different questions, tell them. Because yeah, you can put something in somebody's drink or whatever, because you've seen it on, I think CSI, I don't even watch it myself. Somebody put antifreeze and people drink for months, and eventually they finally die. But if you suspect something, then you have to look back into and see if they got $1 million policy too. They took out $1 million policy a few months ago, now the person dead, no cause, no reason, whatever. Then you have to look at a person to see if they grieving too, because a lot of times people, they know they grieve different ways or whatever. But then if they concern more about that policy after that person dies, you need to look back and see what could have happened to that body. Did they really push this person over the edge? And the same thing, you can scare somebody to death. You know somebody scared of snakes, then you put a snake in the house or whatever, you can scare somebody to death. That's true. So you have to look at the body, tell you a lot of things. That's why you got to check things out. The coroner just don't go there and say the person dead. No, you got to do an investigation and find out what led up to that. Who saw the person last, when the last time the person was last, what the last time when they ate. Different things like that. You need to find these things out. And like it's a suspicious death when it comes to a suicide or either murder. A lot of times those cases, most times go to the crime lab. On a fire death, most time on a fire death, if it's a house, person's in, the only one living in the house, space heater, set the fire. What you need to do is get a positive ID, because you can plant somebody in the house and set a fire, and then the person might be in Hawaii somewhere, and you say that was that person. Next thing you know, a couple of weeks later, that person come walking into town. I mean, I thought you were dead. Well, that's why the purpose of an autopsy and to determine who this person is. So in a fire death, you're going to do an autopsy for a positive ID. We need to do fingerprint. Sometimes you need to do blood and see was the person drunk or what they cooking on the stove. So the fire department will do a lot of investigation on that part. But when it comes down to the body, the coroner should be finding out who that person is before they bury them. So that's very important. After the autopsy, following the autopsy, it may take several weeks before you actually get the death certificate because of toxicology. Toxicology is backed up at the crime lab or whatever. And when you're saying toxicology, like poison or some kind of drugs in their system when you draw blood, that takes a little while. But the autopsy don't take like a day or two after that. You can do the autopsy within that same day. But in order to get the complete report, the medical examiner will not release it until they get the toxicology. And sometimes it takes months. Then a lot of times family members upset because they need a death certificate or whatever. If you need a death certificate for some reason that you about to lose the house, or you need it for the bank to get the money out, we can always give you a pending death certificate. Then once we actually get the call, we can go back and amend that death certificate and put the cause on there. But a lot of time banks and different ones would take a pending death certificate just to prove that the person is dead, and they'll go ahead and release the money of the person, because you need money sometimes to bury the person, you need money to keep their house notes up, whatever. So those things we try to assist the family any kind of way we can on that area. Autopsy is not also, like I said, not necessarily all the time. Some family and religion don't want autopsy. Same like some religion don't want the body embalmed. They don't believe in that. So you have to get permission from their family if it's no criminal. If it's just like a natural death, but if it's criminal, if a person been raped, or a person been stabbed or shot, 9 times out of 10 you got to do autopsy, because you're going to wind up going to court. You got to prove why that person died. So, but you have to take all that under consideration when you're talking about what kind of group it is. Some people, like I said, just don't believe in autopsy. Coroner cases, which may be classified as a coroner case, including death of a homicide, suicide, car crashes. Like I said, a person that's in jail, automatic, the coroner got to be called in when a person in jail, because they're in a law enforcement facility. Even if they out here and get arrested out on the side of the street or whatever, they're in custody of the police and they fall dead. Even if you tase them and they fall dead, automatically the coroner need to do an investigation on that. So that's very important. And then when it comes down to an inquest is when the coroner be acting as the judge. We'll get juries like you're going in a regular court, and the purpose of the inquest is to determine the cause and manner of death, and the evidence to come together, and then you let the jury hear the inquest, what all the findings that you have, and that's only the jury help to determine the cause and manner of death. The coroner acts as the judge on that. The coroner also have the same power as the law enforcement for an investigation. He can subpoena any record. He can do an investigation. He can go to any family house or whatever. That's his job, to do what he need to do to find out why that person died. And most of everyone want to know why that loved one passed, and they want answers quick. Sometimes people get upset with the hospital because the hospital didn't do what they're supposed to do. And that's why a lot of times I go back and pull the medical record, because sometimes people do make mistakes. So I believe in trying to do my best to try to pull the medical record to find out, did the hospital, did somebody do something they wasn't supposed to do? Why? Then most time if I see a fracture or some kind of scar on this person, then a bruise or whatever, well, I want to know what happened. And you should know what happened to this person. Did somebody do this? Was it deliberately done or whatever? So anytime I see an injury, I try to go back and do the leg work on it to find out what happened to that time. But that's what an inquest is, when you determine that. I know they were looking to do one that they didn't know what happened. They went undetermined right now. They said it might have been a suicide, might have been a homicide or whatever. So what the coroner can do is call an inquest and call all the investigators, the DA, the different ones to come in and let's determine why this person died. But like I said, a coroner don't just sit around. I'm saying not what you're doing, you're supposed to do, because there's some work behind that to determine why a person died or whatever. Every case don't be shut and closed like that. Some cases you got to do some leg work and you got to go talk to a lot of folks or whatever. Make sense? Y'all have questions?